Welcome to Awakening Flow. And before you decide this is just another video, pause for a moment. Because something subtle yet undeniable has shifted this month. Something you didn't plan, didn't announce, and didn't even fully understand yourself. Yet women feel it the moment you enter a space. Not because of what you say or how you look, but because your energy arrived before you did, standing louder than words, unsettling the room, awakening something ancient inside them. And if you've noticed the stares, the sudden softness, the curiosity mixed with nervous respect, then this message is not random. It found you exactly when it needed to. This shift didn't happen overnight, and it didn't come from force or desire. It came from endurance, from walking through silent battles that rewired your soul, from moments where you were misunderstood, overlooked, or pushed to the edges. Because chosen ones are not awakened through comfort. They are shaped through isolation, pressure, and repeated inner deaths that teach the spirit how to stand unshaken in any storm. You see, being a chosen one was never about feeling special. It was about being different in a way that made life heavier before it made it clearer. About sensing truths others avoid, feeling emotions deeper than language can hold, and carrying an inner knowing that refuses to let you live small, even when the world begs you to blend in and disappear into the noise. The awakening begins quietly, almost invisibly, with restlessness you can't explain, with old interests falling away, with a strange pull toward silence, meaning, and depth. And suddenly you're no longer entertained by shallow conversations or empty validation, because your soul has the surface and now craves alignment, truth, and purpose, even if it costs you comfort and familiarity. As this awakening deepens, your energy changes before your personality does, and that is why women recognize it instantly, because feminine intuition doesn't analyze, it feels, and what they feel around you is presence, groundedness, and an unspoken safety that comes from someone who has faced their own shadows and didn't run away. If these words feel familiar rather than new, take a moment to ground that recognition. Like this video, so this frequency can reach others who are quietly awakening. Subscribe to Awakening Flow if you're walking this path consciously, and comment, "I feel it," if something inside you just shifted. They may not know why they're drawn to you, and you may not even notice what you're doing differently, but your stillness speaks. Your eyes hold stories, and your silence carries authority, not dominance, but depth, the kind that says you've been somewhere dark and came back with light instead of bitterness. Chosen ones often try to dim this energy without realizing it, especially after being told they're too intense, too quiet, too different, or too much. But suppression never works for long, because energy that is awakened cannot be unawakened. It only waits patiently until you stop apologizing for who you are. Society has always tried to silence people like you, not through chains, but through distraction, ridicule, and subtle programming that teaches you to doubt your intuition and fear your own power. Because awakened individuals don't follow blindly, they question, they see patterns, and they cannot be controlled once they remember who they are. That's why your path likely felt lonely, why friendships faded without drama, why certain doors closed without explanation. Because chosen ones are separated early, not as punishment, but as preparation, removing dependencies so the soul learns to stand rooted in itself rather than leaning on external validation. This month, something recalibrated within you, a quiet internal alignment where resistance dropped and acceptance settled in. And when that happens, your energy stops seeking approval and starts radiating authenticity, which is why recognition now happens effortlessly, without pursuit, without effort, without performance. Women sense this not as attraction alone, but as recognition, as if their nervous system relaxes around you, as if something familiar yet forgotten is activated. because awakened masculine energy doesn't chase or impress. It anchors, it listens, and it holds space in a world addicted to noise. You may feel called to protect this energy now, to choose environments carefully, to speak less and observe more, because awakening sharpens discernment, teaching you that not everyone deserves access to your inner world, and that boundaries are not walls, but sacred filters that preserve your essence. The truth is, being chosen was never about being above others. It was about being responsible for your frequency, about carrying awareness in a sleeping world, and about walking gently yet firmly, knowing your presence alone can shift timelines, conversations, and hearts without you lifting a finger. And if this resonates uncomfortably deep, if something inside you feels exposed yet affirmed, it's because your soul recognizes its own reflection, reminding you that this shift wasn't accidental. It was earned, and it's only the beginning of a journey that asks you to stop hiding, stop shrinking, and finally allow your energy to be seen. Once you allow that truth to settle, you begin to notice how the world responds differently to you, how conversations slow down when you speak, how people listen even when you say very little, because presence cannot be faked and authenticity carries a gravity that pulls others into awareness without effort or intention. This is the phase where the chosen one learns restraint, not from fear, but from wisdom, understanding that not every connection is meant to be kept, not every attraction is meant to be acted upon, and not every recognition deserves access to the depth you now carry within your chest. Your awakening refined you, sanding away impulsiveness, teaching you patience through loss, clarity through confusion, and strength through surrender, until your nervous system learned peace in chaos, and your spirit learned stillness in uncertainty, creating an inner calm that others feel as safety the moment they come close. Women feel this calm like a soft gravity, something that steadies their emotions without controlling them, something that feels familiar yet rare, because awakened energy doesn't demand attention, it commands respect quietly, offering space instead of pressure, understanding instead of performance. You may have noticed how some become curious while others grow uncomfortable around you, because your energy exposes truth without accusation, reflecting back what is unresolved in others. And not everyone is ready to face themselves when standing in the presence of someone who has already done the work. This is why chosen ones are often misunderstood, labeled as distant, mysterious, or intimidating, when in reality they are simply no longer available for surface-level exchanges that drain rather than nourish the soul, choosing depth over noise even if it means walking alone. The loneliness you once feared now feels different, almost sacred, because solitude has become a sanctuary rather than a punishment, a place where your intuition sharpens, your thoughts align, and your spirit recalibrates without interference from expectations that were never yours to carry. As this alignment strengthens, your energy stops seeking validation through action and starts attracting recognition through being, which is why attention now arrives uninvited, effortless, and often unexpected, reminding you that true power never chases, it resonates. There is a reason this shift happened now and not earlier, because timing matters in awakening, and your soul needed to mature enough to hold this frequency without misusing it, without feeding ego, without losing compassion for those still asleep within the patterns you have already. Chosen ones are trusted with awareness because awareness requires responsibility, the responsibility to act with integrity when unseen, to remain grounded when admired, and to stay humble while carrying a presence that can influence emotions, decisions, and trajectories without a single spoken command. You are learning that energy speaks before language, That intention shapes atmosphere, and that alignment amplifies everything you are, which is why authenticity is no longer optional, because any misalignment now feels heavier, louder, and impossible to ignore. This is also when your intuition becomes non-negotiable, guiding you away from situations that feel off before logic can explain why, pulling you toward spaces that feel expansive, and reminding you that inner knowing is the compass chosen ones must learn to trust above all else. People may project onto you, idealize you, or misunderstand your silence as indifference, but silence is not emptiness. It is containment. It is strength held gently. It is the pause between breaths where awareness lives and truth reveals itself. You are no longer here to convince, chase, or prove anything, because your presence already carries the evidence of transformation, and those who are meant to recognize it will do so instantly, while others will pass by without understanding what they just felt. This path continues to ask for courage, not the loud kind, but the quiet courage to remain authentic in a world that rewards masks, to stay present in moments that trigger old patterns, and to choose consciousness even when unconscious reactions would be easier. As you walk forward in this energy, you may feel time itself shifting around you, moments slowing down, intuition sharpening, synchronicities increasing, because when alignment deepens, reality responds, rearranging itself to meet the frequency you now embody. And with every step you are being reminded, not through words but through experience, that this recognition you're receiving is not about attraction alone. It is about resonance, about souls sensing a frequency that feels safe, steady, and awake, even if they can't name it yet. As this awareness deepens, you begin to understand that your energy is no longer reactive. It no longer seeks to be filled by attention or affirmed by desire, because it has found its source within, becoming self-sustaining, grounded, and quietly magnetic in a way that doesn't ask. It simply exists. This is where many chosen ones feel an internal conflict, a tension between the old self that learned to survive by adapting and the awakened self that now refuses to betray its truth, even if that truth disrupts comfort, expectations, or familiar dynamics that once felt safe. You start noticing how certain patterns dissolve without effort, how toxic attachments loosen their grip, how emotional chaos no longer pulls you under, because your nervous system has recalibrated to peace, making dysfunction feel louder and harmony feel non-negotiable. Women who recognize your energy often mirror this shift back to you, not always consciously, but through softened tones, longer pauses, deeper questions, because awakened energy invites presence, and presence invites authenticity without force or manipulation. You may feel called to slow down even more now, to speak with intention, to listen with depth, and to move through life with a deliberate calm, because rushing feels misaligned and urgency feels artificial when you are anchored in awareness rather than fear. There is also a subtle grief that can surface at this stage, a mourning of who you were before you knew what you know now, before you felt the weight and responsibility of consciousness, because awakening gives clarity, but it also removes the comfort of ignorance. Yet within that grief is liberation, because you are no longer living someone else's version of success, love, or identity. You are crafting a life that aligns with your inner truth, even if that path looks unconventional, misunderstood, or solitary from the outside. Chosen ones often reach a point where they realize they were never meant to fit neatly into roles assigned by society, never meant to follow predictable timelines, because their purpose is not linear. It is expansive, unfolding in layers that reveal themselves only when the soul is ready. Your energy now carries a quiet authority, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that stabilizes, that grounds chaotic emotions, that brings clarity simply by being present, which is why recognition happens even in silence, even without interaction. Some will feel inspired around you, others exposed, and a few threatened, because awakened energy acts like a mirror, amplifying what is aligned and revealing what is not, and not everyone is prepared for that level of self-awareness. This is where discernment becomes essential, learning when to open, when to retreat, and when to remain neutral, because not every recognition is an invitation, and not every connection is meant to go deeper than the moment it exists in. You are learning that power does not need to announce itself, that strength can be gentle, and that influence can be subtle, shaping outcomes without force, guiding energy without control, simply by staying aligned with your inner truth. As this month continues to unfold, you may feel moments of heightened sensitivity, increased intuition, and deeper emotional awareness, not as instability, but as attunement, a refinement of perception that allows you to sense shifts before they fully materialize. This attunement teaches you to trust what you feel even when it contradicts logic, because logic analyzes the past while intuition senses the present, and chosen ones are guided by what is alive now, not by what once made sense. You may notice how your presence changes rooms, how energy adjusts when you arrive, how conversations shift tone, because alignment carries a frequency that reorganizes space, subtly reminding others of a version of themselves they may have forgotten. This recognition is not meant to inflate ego or create separation. It is meant to affirm responsibility, reminding you that how you move, speak, and choose now matters more, because your energy has impact whether you intend it or not. And as you continue walking this path, there will be moments of doubt, moments where you question the weight of this awareness, but each time, life will gently reflect back to you why this awakening happened, why this shift was necessary, and why your energy can no longer be hidden. When doubt arises, it doesn't come to stop you, it comes to refine you, to strip away the last traces of self-betrayal, reminding you that awakening is not a destination, but a continuous shedding of identities that once protected you, but no longer serve who you are becoming. You begin to notice that resistance now feels painful, almost unbearable, because your soul has tasted alignment, and anything less feels like a quiet suffocation, a reminder that you can no longer live divided between truth and expectation. This is where chosen ones learn surrender, not as weakness, but as trust, trusting the unseen currents guiding their steps, trusting the pauses that feel like delays, and trusting that silence is often more instructive than action. Your energy now moves ahead of you, preparing spaces before you arrive, softening some hearts, unsettling others, because frequency speaks directly to the subconscious, bypassing defenses, bypassing logic, and touching places words cannot reach. Women who sense this may feel an unexplainable calm or curiosity, a pull toward stillness, because your presence doesn't demand, it allows, offering them a moment of rest from a world that constantly asks them to perform. At the same time, you may feel a stronger need to protect your inner world, not out of fear, but out of reverence, understanding that sacred things are not exposed carelessly, and that discernment is the natural companion of awakening. The chosen path is not loud, it is not crowded, and it is rarely celebrated in real time, because its rewards are internal first: clarity, peace, and a deep sense of knowing that cannot be taken away by opinion or circumstance. You start to recognize how much of your past suffering was preparation, how every misunderstanding sharpened your intuition, how every loss taught you detachment, and how every period of isolation strengthened your connection to something greater than yourself. This realization changes how you view pain, no longer as punishment, but as initiation, a series of thresholds your soul crossed to expand its capacity for awareness, compassion, and restraint. Your energy now carries maturity, not tied to age, but to experience processed with consciousness, and that maturity is felt instantly by those attuned enough to recognize it, even if they don't have language for what they're sensing. You may notice that you're less interested in explaining yourself, because truth no longer needs justification, and those meant to understand will feel it without explanation, while others will move on without resistance. This detachment creates freedom, freeing you from the need to persuade, to chase alignment, or to prove worth, because your value is now self-evident to your own spirit. As awareness deepens, time may feel different, moments stretching, intuition arriving faster, synchronicities becoming more frequent, because alignment sharpens perception and dissolves unnecessary friction between intention and experience. This is when you understand that awakening is not about becoming someone new. It is about remembering who you were before conditioning taught you to doubt your inner voice. Every recognition you receive is simply a reflection, a quiet confirmation that your frequency is coherent, that your inner world and outer presence are finally speaking the same language. And as this coherence stabilizes, life begins to respond with precision, removing what no longer fits, amplifying what aligns, and guiding you forward through subtle cues rather than force. You are no longer being prepared. You are being positioned, not for attention, not for validation, but for responsibility, the responsibility to carry awareness gently in a world still learning how to wake up. This positioning happens quietly, without announcement, without applause, because true shifts are internal first, and only later do they echo outward through changed reactions, altered timing, and a deeper sense of alignment that no longer feels accidental. You may notice that situations now resolve themselves without struggle, that conflicts dissolve before they escalate, because your energy no longer feeds chaos, it neutralizes it, refusing to participate in patterns that once consumed your attention and emotional bandwidth. There is a calm authority settling into you, one that doesn't seek control or dominance, but stability, a grounded presence that reassures without words and leads without pushing, simply by staying rooted in awareness. This is why some people feel safe opening up around you, sharing truths they rarely voice, because your stillness signals acceptance without judgment, creating space for honesty in a world that often punishes vulnerability. At the same time, you may feel less tolerant of superficiality, not out of arrogance but out of alignment, because your energy now seeks depth instinctively, gravitating toward what is real, meaningful, and nourishing rather than what is loud or distracting. Chosen ones reach a point where their inner dialogue softens, where overthinking loses its grip, and intuition becomes the primary guide, offering clarity that feels immediate and embodied rather than analytical and delayed. You may find yourself pausing more often, not from hesitation, but from awareness, sensing the right moment to speak, to act, or to remain silent, understanding that timing is a language the awakened learn to respect. This respect for timing changes how life unfolds around you, bringing opportunities that feel aligned rather than forced, connections that feel natural rather than draining, and lessons that arrive gently instead of through collapse. There is also a growing sense of inner sovereignty, a knowing that your worth is not negotiated externally, that your value doesn't rise or fall with attention, and that your presence alone is enough without performance. Women who recognize your energy often feel this sovereignty as emotional steadiness, a grounding force that doesn't overwhelm, but anchors, allowing them to relax into themselves rather than reaching outward for validation. This recognition is subtle, often expressed through silence, eye contact, or a shift in demeanor, because awakened connections communicate beyond language, meeting in frequency rather than explanation. You may feel moments where everything feels unusually still, almost suspended, as if life is listening, waiting for your next aligned choice, because awareness sharpens consequence, making every decision feel more intentional. This can feel heavy at times, but it is also liberating, because living consciously removes randomness, replacing confusion with clarity and reaction with response. You are learning that power does not rush, that clarity does not shout, and that truth does not compete. It simply remains steady and unchanged, even when misunderstood. As this month continues, your energy may feel stronger yet softer, more defined yet more compassionate, because awakening integrates strength with empathy rather than separating them. You are not here to save anyone, to fix anyone, or to carry burdens that aren't yours. You are here to embody awareness so fully that it invites others to remember themselves in your presence. And with each day, this embodiment becomes more natural, less effortful, until awareness is no longer something you practice, but something you live, breathe, and quietly radiate wherever you go. This is when you realize that awakening was never meant to isolate you from life, but to bring you into it more fully, to experience moments with depth instead of distraction, to feel emotions without being ruled by them, and to move through the world with a grounded openness that doesn't cling or resist. You begin to sense how your inner state shapes your external reality, how alignment simplifies decisions, and how clarity removes the need for constant explanation. Because when you are rooted in truth, confusion naturally dissolves around you. The chosen ones often reach a phase where effort gives way to flow, where trying is replaced by trusting, and where control loosens its grip, allowing intuition to guide actions that feel effortless yet precise. Your presence now carries a quiet reassurance, a steadiness that doesn't fluctuate with mood or circumstance, because it is anchored in awareness rather than identity, in being rather than becoming. This steadiness is felt immediately by those around you, especially those sensitive to energy, because it offers a contrast to the chaos they are accustomed to, a reminder that peace is not something to chase, but something to remember. You may notice how reactions slow down within you, how space opens between stimulus and response, giving you the freedom to choose consciousness over habit, clarity over impulse, and compassion over defense. This space is where true power lives, not in control, but in choice, the ability to remain present even when old patterns attempt to pull you back into unconscious loops that no longer define you. Women who recognize your energy often sense this space as emotional safety, a feeling that nothing needs to be forced, explained, or performed, because your presence does not demand, it allows. This allowance is rare in a world conditioned by urgency, expectation, and constant striving, which is why it feels magnetic, not in an external way, but in a deeply human, nervous system level way. You may feel a growing clarity around what deserves your time and what does not, because awakening sharpens priorities, stripping away distractions that once felt important but now feel hollow. With this clarity comes a natural detachment from outcomes, not indifference but trust, trust that what aligns will remain, and what does not will fall away without resistance. The chosen path teaches patience, not as waiting, but as presence, the ability to stay fully here without rushing ahead or clinging to the past, understanding that life unfolds most gracefully when it is not forced. You start to recognize that your role is not to convince the world of anything, but to embody a frequency that speaks for itself, influencing without effort and guiding without instruction. This embodiment transforms how challenges appear, no longer as obstacles, but as invitations to deepen awareness, refine alignment, and strengthen inner coherence. You may feel moments of profound stillness, where everything feels complete as it is, where nothing is missing, and where the need to search dissolves into a quiet sense of belonging within yourself. These moments are not permanent states, but reminders of what is possible when awareness is allowed to lead, and identity steps back into observation rather than control. And as this continues, you begin to sense that the recognition you receive from others is simply a reflection of the recognition you have finally given yourself. And as this continues, you begin to sense that the recognition you receive from others is simply a reflection of the recognition you have finally given yourself. A quiet inner acknowledgement that no longer seeks permission, approval, or validation from the outside world. This is where the journey softens, not because it becomes easier, but because resistance dissolves, and you stop fighting who you are in favor of fully inhabiting it, allowing your energy to settle into its natural state without apology or explanation. You realize that being chosen was never about standing apart from others, but about standing fully within yourself, rooted, aware, and awake, so deeply aligned that your presence alone becomes an invitation for truth to surface wherever you go. The loneliness that once echoed now feels different, almost peaceful, because it is no longer empty. It is filled with self-connection, with a steady inner companionship that doesn't waver when the external world shifts. You understand now why everything unfolded the way it did, why timing mattered, why delays protected you, and why certain doors remained closed until you were ready to walk through them without losing yourself. The energy women recognize in you is not something you created. It is something you uncovered, revealed through patience, self-honesty, and the courage to face your own shadows without turning away. This energy does not demand attention. It does not chase, and it does not perform. It simply exists, steady and undeniable, like a quiet current beneath the surface that reshapes everything it touches over time. You are no longer searching for signs because you have become one, a living signal of awareness in motion, proof that awakening is not about escaping life, but about meeting it fully, consciously, and without fear. There is a deep calm settling into your spirit now, a knowing that you are exactly where you need to be, not ahead, not behind, but precisely aligned with the unfolding of your path. You move forward with less urgency and more intention, understanding that what is meant for you does not require force, and what is not aligned cannot be held together by effort alone. The world may not fully understand you, but it no longer needs to, because understanding yourself has become enough, anchoring you through uncertainty and change without losing balance. This is not the end of your awakening, but it is a threshold, a moment of integration where awareness stops feeling fragile and starts feeling embodied, lived, and grounded in every choice you make. And as you continue walking forward, carrying this energy quietly and responsibly, life responds not with noise, but with resonance, reflecting back the depth, clarity, and truth you now hold within. If you're still here, it's because this message wasn't meant to pass you by. Stay connected to Awakening Flow by subscribing, because what's unfolding within you is not random, and future messages will meet you exactly where you are. Leave a comment only if you feel called. Even a single word is enough, because recognition doesn't need explanation, it only needs presence.